the Public na hÉireann, Provisional Government of the Irish Republic to the people of Ireland. Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which she received her old tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to her flags and strikes for her freedom. Having organised and trained her manhood through her secret revolutionary organisation, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and through her open military organisations, the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizen Army, having patiently perfected her discipline, having resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal itself, she now seizes that moment and, supported by her exiled children in America and by gallant allies in Europe, but relying in the first on her own strength, she strikes in full confidence of victory. We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland and to the unfettered control of Irish destinies to be sovereign and indefeasible. The long usurpation of that right by a foreign land and government has not extinguished that right, nor can it ever be extinguished except by the destruction of the Irish people. In every generation, the Irish people have asserted their right to national freedom and sovereignty. 6 times during the last 300 years, they have asserted it in arms. Standing on that fundamental right, and again asserting it in arms in the face of the world, we hereby proclaim the Irish Republic as a sovereign, independent state. And we pledge our lives and the lives of our comrades in arms to the cause of its freedom, of its welfare, and of its exaltation among the nations. The Irish Republic is entitled to, and hereby claims, the allegiance of every Irishman and Irish woman. The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation and all of its parts, cherishing all the children of the nation equally and oblivious of all the differences carefully fostered by an alien government which have divided a minority from the majority in the past, until our arms have brought the opportune moment for the establishment of a permanent national government, representative of the whole people of Ireland and elected by the suffrages of all her men and women. The provisional government, hereby constituted, will administer the civil and military affairs of the Republic in trust for the people. We place this cause of the Irish Republic under the protection of the Most High God, whose blessing we invoke upon our arms, and we pray that no one who serves the cause will dishonour it by cowardice, inhumanity, or rapine. In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the august destiny to which it is called. Signed on behalf of the Provisional Government, Tomás Clark, Sean McDermott, Tomás McDonough, P.H. Pearce, Eamon Cant, James Connolly, Joseph Plunkett.
The proclamation was read by Patrick Pearce, who attended the same Muslim Brothers school that I did, CDS Westland Row in the city centre of Dublin. His brother Willie also attended the school. And I'm going to read something for you about when most of the bloodshed took place and where the British sent many a young boy to meet their maker. And they sent them to meet their maker. I was born in a small street called Percy Place on the banks of Grand Canal, just south of the city centre. I was born in a house there, and along with all the rest of my siblings. And that house happens to be approximately 80 yards from Mount Street Bridge, to which there's a commemorative column there today, remembering the deed that happened on the 3rd day of the rebellion, the Wednesday of the rebellion. The 3rd day of the rising, however, will be remembered for a bloody battle that centred on Mount Street Bridge to the south of the city. The handful of rebels dispersed between 25 Northumberland Road, the 2 schools on the road, and Clanwilliam House had had a quiet night. Now, the distance between the foremost 25 Northumberland Road and Clanwilliam House on the opposite side of the bridge over the canal was about 200 yards, okay? That's the entire distance between the first spot that the British met the Irish and the last spot. But in Clanwilliam House, Thomas Walsh was tired after keeping watch. At 7 a.m, he and his brother James were allowed a couple of hours sleep and then some breakfast. At 10 a.m, they began barricading a window when they spotted a neighbour of theirs passing the house. The Walshes asked them to tell their mother that they were alive and to send some food. And a short time later, their brother Leo arrived with a parcel of hot steak, bread and butter. Over the course of the night and the morning, British troops had been arriving at Kingstown, which is now Dunleary, on the south side of the city, about 6 miles out. They had lost one of their 4 machine guns while embarking in England, and left all their grenades behind too. 2 of the machine guns were then sent to Arklow, southwards in County Wicklow, where there were reports of trouble. There wasn't actually. At 10:35 a.m, 4 battalions of the Sherwood Foresters marched toward the city. Most were in uniform no longer than 8 weeks, and many had never even fired a rifle. As they say, when they arrived at Dunleary, they were shown how to load and fire their weapons. This is what we're dealing with, okay? The British Empire. As they walked through the South Dublin sunshine, many of them presumed that they were in France. The battalion split, with 2 heading for Kilmainham. The others continued toward the city centre. They were greeted with tea and sandwiches by Dubliners. Maps and field glasses were pressed into their hands as gifts, and intelligence of varying accuracy was given to them regarding the rebels' position. A battalion adjutant, Captain Frederick Dietrichson, was delighted to find his wife Beatrice and children amongst those waving and welcoming the marching troops. She had left their native Nottingham in fear of German Zeppelin raids for the refuge of Dublin. Captain Dietrichson embraced his family before moving on. A few minutes later, the Sherwood Foresters encountered the rebels. Captain Dietrichson was amongst the first to die. Some 300 yards from Mount Street Bridge, I lied, I said it was 200. The troops came under fire from 25 Northumberland Road. 10 Sherwood Foresters fell in that volley. After some confusion, they identified the source of the firing, but without any heavy guns to support them, officers drew their swords and led a bayonet charge across the road and towards the rebels' house, where they were shot at point-blank range. In Clanwilliam House, Thomas Walsh and his brother James were enjoying the parcel sent by his mother. Quote, "We were nearly finished the meal when we heard firing not far off, and we all rushed to our posts," he recalls. He and James ran to their positions at the back of the house. It was now about 12 noon. I saw a man in English uniform running from Percy Place, along Percy Lane, and up the steps of a house. I fired for the first time from my Holt gun, and for that matter from any other rifle. I do not know what happened to me, or how long I was unconscious. In the excitement, I did not heed the lectures, and did not hold the weapon correctly. The result was the butt hit me under the arm and knocked me out. Walsh came to his senses and fired again and again, until the rifle heated so much it was impossible to hold it. He moved to another window. From here we could see terrible confusion among the enemy. They were being attacked from 25 Northumberland Road, held by Mick Malone and Jimmy Grace. Those who managed to get by number 25 ran towards Mount Street Bridge and took cover anywhere they could find it, on house steps, behind trees, and even in the gutters on the roadway. We kept on blazing away at those in the gutters, and after a time, as they were killed, the next fellow moved up and passed the man killed in front of him. This gave one the impression of a giant, human, khaki-coloured caterpillar.
Wow.
Newly trained in the tactics of trench warfare, the Sherwood Foresters were refused permission to move around and flank the rebels. All they had to do was go up to the next bridge. Even as a child, I wondered why they never did that. There was another bridge 100 yards up the road. But no, not our boys. They went down on the bridge again and again. They made the attempt. The whistle was blown each time for a frontal charge, but they did not survive. By now there was a great pile of dead and dying on the bridge. A clergyman and nurses and doctors from a nearby hospital braved the shooting to remove the dead and dying. From the moment the first civilian got to the bridge, not one shot was fired by either side, continues Walsh. And when the last civilian was out of sight, the firing started again, and the bridge was rushed as before, but with the same result. Again the bridge was filled with dead and dying, and again cleared by the civilians who now had white sheets to carry the wounded on. In Boland's Mill, it seems that Eamon de Valera decided against reinforcing the rebels around Mount Street Bridge because he expected an assault on his own position, and gradually there were casualties, as described by Thomas Walsh. During the latter fight, Paddy Doyle would say, "Boy, isn't this a great day for Ireland?" And little sentences like this. He was very proud to live to see such a day. After some time, Paddy was not saying anything. Jim spoke to him and got no reply. He pulled him by the coat and he fell over into his arms. He was shot through the head. Shortly after that, another volunteer, Dick Murphy, was shot dead. Low on manpower, the rebels turned to the dressmaker's model that Thomas Walsh had found in the house. We put a coat on this and put it in front of the window, about 6 feet back in the room. And what a peppering this poor innocent thing got. It was riddled, but drew a lot of fire from our heads. Dead and wounded littered the road. Occasionally, civilians attempted to escape the fighting. During the lull in the firing, quote, while the cleaning up process was on, an old man rushed from Percy Lane and was fired on from under the wall of the canal and fell dead. I heard after that he was an old German